Hey guys, today's video is going to be for the second vampire design, which is going to be slightly more inhuman and creepy looking than my previous video. I want to explain the concept and why I chose to make it look the way I did, because it's not your usual classic or stereotypical vampire. But first I'm just going to quickly go through what I did to prep the doll and all of that stuff. The doll I chose to use was this gargoyle, which I have no idea what is called. I then made a mold from the face using polymer clay and then made a mold from that using some mold putty. Next I cut off the mouth and the jaw from the original doll and did the same to the mold. So as I said, this is not going to be your stereotypical vampire design, which is more of a human looking thing with sharp teeth. I wanted it to look much more like a monster or unknown creature type thing, so I kind of went for a human bat mutation. I also did not at all attempt to make it look pretty. I feel like in order to actually be afraid of a vampire, it should look much more like a soul-sucking creature from the dark underworld, rather than a human who just has not slept for the past year or so. And I mean, obviously, if you prefer the more neat human looking thing, then check out my previous video, because that is kind of the design I went for in that one. Another thing I took into consideration for the design was the fact that vampires are usually pretty old. You rarely hear about a 30-year-old vampire. And so I made sure to make it look kind of almost mummified, in the sense that it looks kind of dried out and thin, hollowed out, wrinkly, anemic, and just overall dead looking. To draw in some features from a bat, I made the black, small, beady eyes, and then I made the nose much more like a bat rather than a human nose, as well as the ears. I have had a couple of questions asking why I don't use the epoxy sculpt or air dry clay when making these, and truthfully I just prefer using polymer clay. I like that there's no time limit for how long you can work with it, and it's a material I already have, and when making my miniatures I always tend to end up with quite a lot of scrap clay, which I'm able to use for these projects. And also, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I like how this method allows you to create a non-permanent version. So if you wanted to, you could turn this into a mask instead of gluing it onto the doll the way I do. And so if you wanted a doll to look like a monster for a shorter period of time, that's a great option. And as always, if you have any requests for themes, characters, etc. that you'd like to see a repaint for, please do leave them in the comments. After baking, I glued the face and the ears onto the doll. And then, just like in my Wendigo and my zombie videos, I used a tea bag to make it look bald. And this is just because, again, if you take into consideration that the vampire is going to be over 100 years old, the hair is probably not going to be as thick and luscious as you see in the shampoo commercials. For this repaint, I'm going to be using just acrylic paint, which means I'm not going to be using the Mr. Super Clear or any other sealant. I first painted the entire face using a skin tone because I didn't want that stereotypical grey look. I then went in with some pink and purple shades to make it look more fleshy, and then finally went in with some brown and greyish shades. Next, I added resin to the eyes, and I also added some glaze just around the mouth and a tiny bit under the eyes. For the hair, I chose to use white viscose because I wanted it to look, well, dead but also kind of witch-like, and I just glued this on in thin sections. Lastly, I just painted the wings that the doll came with to make them look a bit more like the color scheme I'm working with here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next tutorial.